239 people disappeared. Not in a storm, not in a crash, but in total silence. A 250-ton aircraft erased from reality. March 8, 2014, 12:41 a.m. A Boeing 777, a masterpiece of modern engineering, vanishes from the face of the earth. 239 souls, high above the Gulf of Thailand, suddenly blinked out. No distress signal, no wreckage, no answers. For over a decade, we've been told it's a mystery. But what if it's more than that? What if this wasn't a crash, but a systematic deletion of a physical object from our reality? Welcome to Storyverse English, where today we aren't just looking for a plane. We are looking for the truth behind the greatest digital and physical vanish in human history. Buckle up. This is the unseen file of MH370. To understand how a 250-ton machine vanishes, we must first understand the invisible threads that hold our world together. At 35,000 feet, a pilot isn't just flying a plane. They are navigating a web of data. This is where the story of MH370 shifts from a routine flight to a digital nightmare. At 1:19 a.m., the aircraft was approaching a handoff point, a transition from Malaysian airspace to Vietnamese airspace. It is a moment of routine protocol. The Malaysian controller spoke. Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night. The response was calm, steady. Good night, Malaysian 370. These were the last words spoken by Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, or perhaps his co-pilot. We may never know. But what happened in the next 120 seconds is what experts call the dark gap. Exactly at 1:21 a.m., the transponder was manually switched off. In an instant, the plane disappeared from secondary radar. To the civilian controllers in Kuala Lumpur and Ho Chi Minh, MH370 didn't crash. It simply ceased to exist. But how? How does a transponder, a device designed to shout the plane's location to the world, just go silent? It requires a deliberate hand, a turn of a switch, a choice. At Storyverse English, we look deeper into these choices. Was it a mechanical failure, or was it a tactical erasure? As the transponder died, so did the ACARS, the Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System. Think of ACARS as the plane's nervous system, sending health reports back to the ground via satellite. It was silenced. No more data. No more footprints. The plane had gone dark. Imagine the confusion in the control tower. A blip that was there a second ago is now a void. They called the cockpit. Silence. They tried the radio frequencies. Static. They asked other planes in the area to relay messages. Nothing but the haunting hum of the atmosphere. While the civilian world was blind, the military radars were screaming. Deep in the secret installations of the Malaysian Air Force, a primary radar echo was detected. It wasn't an identified flight anymore. It was a UFO, an unidentified fast-moving object. The plane had done something no one expected. It didn't continue to Beijing. It made a sharp, aggressive turn to the left. A U-turn over the South China Sea. It flew back across the Malaysian peninsula, zigzagging between flight corridors to avoid detection. It was flying like a ghost, hugging the shadows of the radar coverage. Why would a pilot do this? To hide? Or was there a fire so intense it disabled the electronics but left the wings intact? This is where the 10,000-word mystery deepens. Every technical manual for the Boeing 777 states that a total electronic failure is nearly impossible. there are backups for the backups. And yet, MH370 bypassed them all. By 2:22 a.m., the military radar lost the signal over the Andaman Sea. At this point, the world thought the plane was at the bottom of the ocean near Vietnam. But in reality, the ghost of MH370 was just beginning its long, lonely journey into the vast emptiness of the southern Indian Ocean. It was a flight into the unknown, a flight that was no longer a flight, but a floating grave of data. And as we continue this deep dive on Storyverse English, we must ask, if the plane wanted to be found, it would have stayed on course. If it wanted to vanish, it did a perfect job. The world thought the trail had gone cold. For days, ships and planes searched the South China Sea, looking for debris that didn't exist. They were looking in the wrong place, at the wrong time. But while the human eye was failing, a lone satellite, 35,000 kilometers above the Earth, was listening. This is the story of the Inmarsat 3F1, the satellite that captured the ghost pulses of MH370. Welcome back to Storyverse English. To understand this chapter, you must understand a technical miracle called the handshake. Even though the pilot had switched off the transponder and the ACARS system, there was one part of the plane that remained alive. It was the Satellite Data Unit, SDU. Think of it as a silent heartbeat. There, every hour, the satellite would send a ping to the plane asking, "I am still here." There were 7 of these handshakes. 7 rhythmic pulses that proved MH370 didn't crash at 1:21 a.m. It flew on, in total silence, for 7 more hours. But here is the problem for the investigators. A ping doesn't give a GPS location. It only gives a distance. It's like hearing a bell ringing in the fog. You know how far away it is, but you don't know the direction. The brilliant minds at Inmarsat, scientists and mathematicians, began a task that had never been attempted in history. They used something called the Doppler effect. You know that sound a police siren makes when it passes you? It gets higher as it approaches and lower as it moves away. They applied this same principle to the frequency of the plane's pings. By analyzing the microscopic shifts in the frequency, they realized the plane wasn't heading north toward Asia. It was heading south, towards the most desolate, cold, and violent part of the world, the southern Indian Ocean. Imagine the scene inside the cabin during those 7 hours. The lights are dimmed. The passengers are perhaps in total darkness. The engines are roaring over the pitch-black water of the ocean, thousands of miles from any landing strip. There is no radio chatter, no screams for help, just the steady, mechanical flight of a Boeing 777 being guided by, what? An autopilot? A frozen pilot? Or someone with a dark, calculated plan? As each hour passed, the satellite recorded another pulse. 2:11 a.m. Ping. 3:11 a.m. Ping. By the time the final partial handshake was recorded at 8:19 a.m., the scientists realized the plane had run out of fuel. The engines would have sputtered, the electrical system would have groaned for its last breath, and the massive aircraft would have entered a death spiral from 35,000 feet. This data changed everything. It shifted the search area from a small sea to a vast, 120,000 square kilometer stretch of ocean where the floor is deeper than the Himalayas are tall. On Storyverse English, we have to ask, why did the plane keep talking to the satellite if the pilot wanted to disappear? Was it a mistake? Or was it the plane itself trying to leave a breadcrumb trail for us to find its grave? The 7 pings are the only evidence we have that the laws of physics still applied to MH370. But they also created the greatest frustration in history. We know when it died. We know how far it traveled. But we still don't know where it is resting. 7 hours of silent flight. 7 handshakes with a satellite. But 0 messages from the cockpit. On Storyverse English, we now enter the darkest territory of this investigation. The why. If MH370 was deliberately diverted, who held the controls, and what was their final destination? The most chilling theory leads us directly to the cockpit. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, a veteran pilot with over 18,000 flying hours, a man who loved flying so much he built a high-tech flight simulator in his own home. But that simulator held a dark secret. Investigators found a deleted flight path on his machine, a path that led deep into the southern Indian Ocean, ending exactly where the satellite pings suggested the plane vanished. Was this a rehearsal for a mass murder-suicide? Did he wait for the co-pilot to leave for a coffee break, lock the door, and depressurize the cabin to put everyone to sleep forever? It is a terrifying thought. A master pilot using his skills not to save lives, but to execute the perfect disappearance. But not everyone agrees. Some point their fingers toward the cargo. Over 200 kilograms of lithium-ion batteries and walkie-talkies. Could a sudden, uncontrollable fire in the cargo hold have filled the plane with toxic smoke? In this scenario, the pilots would have fought to turn the plane back toward the nearest airport, only to be overcome by fumes. The plane, then, would have become a ghost flight, flying on autopilot until the fuel tanks ran dry. Yet, the theories go even deeper into the realm of international intrigue. Some suggest a remote hijack, that hackers used the plane's entertainment system or a hidden vulnerability in the Boeing software to take control of the aircraft from the ground. Why? To steal sensitive technology? Or to prevent the plane from reaching Beijing? And then, there is the Diego Garcia theory, a secret U.S. military base in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Some believe the plane was heading there, either as a hijacked weapon or seeking an emergency landing, and was shot down to prevent a 9/11-style disaster. While the official reports deny this, the lack of wreckage for
over a year fueled the fires of suspicion. On Storyverse English, we must weigh the evidence. If there was a fire, why did the plane make complex turns? If it was a hijacking, why was there no ransom demand? And if it was the pilot, why did he leave no manifesto, no explanation for the world? We are left with a jigsaw puzzle where half the pieces are missing. We have the data of the end, but we are missing the truth of the beginning. As we move closer to the final export of this story, the question remains, is the truth at the bottom of the ocean, or is it hidden in a classified file that we aren't allowed to see? For 508 days, the ocean was silent. No oil slick, no life jackets, no floating suitcases. It was as if MH370 had been deleted from the physical world. But the ocean always returns what it takes. Eventually, in July 2015, on the shores of Reunion Island, thousands of miles from the search zone, a man cleaning a beach found a piece of debris. It was a flapron, a part of the wing of a Boeing 777. The serial numbers matched. For the first time, the families of the 239 souls had a physical proof. The plane was indeed in the water. Welcome back to Storyverse English. This discovery didn't just provide closure. It provided a forensic map. Experts began to study the barnacles, the small sea creatures growing on the metal. By analyzing the species and their growth patterns, scientists could trace the water temperature the debris had traveled through. The trail led back, once again, to the southern Indian Ocean. But the most chilling discovery wasn't where the piece was found, but how it looked. Engineers looked at the edges of the flapper. If the plane had crashed in a controlled glide, if a pilot was trying to land safely on the water, the flapper would have been extended. But it wasn't. It was tucked in. This suggested a high-speed, uncontrolled death dive. More pieces began to wash up. In Mozambique, South Africa, and Madagascar. A piece of the engine cowling, a fragment of the cabin interior, even a part of a TV monitor from the back of a seat. Each piece told a story of a violent breakup, a machine being torn apart by the sheer force of the Indian Ocean. But here, mystery that haunts us at Storyverse English. We found the pieces that floated, but why couldn't we find 200 tons of steel and engines at the bottom? The search, the most expensive in history, covered an area larger than many countries. They used underwater drones, side-scan sonars, and deep-sea microphones. They found 19th century shipwrecks, deep-sea volcanoes, and underwater mountains. But they never found a single bolt of MH370. The ocean is a vast, dark memory card. It has encrypted the location of the wreckage behind layers of silt and thousands of meters of crushing pressure. The debris we found on the beaches is just the metadata, a small glimpse of a much larger file that remains locked away. As we look at these rusted fragments, we realize that MH370 is no longer just a plane. It is a ghost in the machine, a glitch that refuses to be fixed. The pieces on the shore prove it was real, but the silence of the deep proves it was erased. 10 years, thousands of hours of searching, millions of dollars spent, and yet, the greatest mystery of the 21st century remains unsolved. MH370 isn't just a missing plane. It is a scar on our collective confidence. In an era where we can see a person walking on the street from space, a giant Boeing 777 managed to find the only blind spot left in the world. Some say the truth is buried under 5 kilometers of water, hidden in the silence of the seabed. Others believe it is locked away in a top-secret server, waiting for a bitrate high enough to reveal the face of the person who turned that wheel. But perhaps the real mystery isn't where the plane went, but what it represents. It represents the moment technology failed us and the unknown reclaimed its territory. Here at Storyverse English, we don't just tell stories. We archive the glitches in our reality. We explore the shadows where history and mystery collide. The story of MH370 is a reminder that despite our satellites and our sensors, there are still corners of this world that refuse to be mapped. There are still voices that are waiting to be heard. The file of MH370 may be labeled missing, but in the digital universe, nothing is ever truly gone. It is just waiting to be recovered. Thank you for journeying with us through this deep dive. If this story touched you, or if you have a theory that the world hasn't heard yet, leave a comment below. Your voice is the data that keeps these stories alive. I am your narrator, and this has been a special presentation of Storyverse English. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because in the next episode, we might just find another piece of the puzzle that the world tried to erase. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and remember, the screen only goes black if you stop watching.